Thank you, Chairman Fleck, Ranking Member Buka, and other members of the subcommittee. I come here with my colleagues from the opposition alliance known as the MDC Alliance. I travel with Honorable Nelson Chamisa and Mr. Jacob Ngarivumwe. We thank you for inviting us to this great center of American democracy. The 14th of November 2017 began a series of major life-changing events in Zimbabwe that will forever redefine the political and constitutional landscape of our country. On that day, military tanks invaded the streets of the capital, Harare, and in the early hours of the 15th, the military captured Zimbabwe's broadcasting houses and made it clear implicitly that the executive was no longer in control. On 18th November, hundreds of thousands of Zimbabweans marched alongside military personnel in the streets of Harare and Bulawayo and demanded the resignation of President Mugabe. On 21 November, in the middle of impeachment proceedings in Parliament, President Mugabe quietly, if not inelegantly, announced his resignation. With President Mugabe's departure, Zimbabwe now faces an uncertain future, but one which presents real opportunities for reconstructing, rebuilding, and refabricating a new Zimbabwean story and a new Zimbabwean society. Without a doubt, the 37 years of President Mugabe's rule were a sad story of capture, coercion, corruption, poverty, and delegitimization. Zimbabweans lived in fear under a system that paid no respect to their rights and a system that saw continuous impoverishment and suffering, loss of livelihoods amongst ordinary citizens. President Mugabe presided over one of the most autocratic African regimes that stood head and shoulders with the likes of current dictators like Obiang in Equatorial Guinea, Biya in Cameroon, Isaias Afewerki in Eritrea, al-Bashir in Sudan, and Yoweri Museveni in Uganda. What we now need as a country is a genuine break from a tortured past and not a continuation of the old order. The new Zimbabwe, which the majority of people that marched on the 18th of November 2017 crave for, has to be founded on the values and principles of constitutionalism, the rule of law, a just and prosperous society. And in the new Zimbabwe, every citizen must be free to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. And we contend, Mr. Chairman, that our country is in the middle of a transition from a very unhappy regime of 37 years of the torture and pain that I've described above. But like any transition, it can be a captured transition. It can be a derailed transition. It can be a hijacked transition. That is not what the thousands and thousands of people who marched on the 18th of November 2017 are seeking for. Those people who marched in Harare, in Bulawayo, in New York, in Cape Town, in Johannesburg, are looking for a fresh start, a genuine transition to a new Zimbabwean society. But what is the precondition to move to this genuine transition? In our view, the starting point must be returned to true legitimacy, constitutionalism, and the rule of law. The roadmap to legitimacy is the fundamental precondition to the establishment of a sustainable, just, and free Zimbabwe. This roadmap must be anchored on clear benchmarks. These include, number one, the immediate restoration of constitutionalism, the rule of law, and legitimate civilian rule. The military must be demobilized from the streets. Number 2, and very importantly, the implementation of genuine electoral reforms to ensure that the election of July-August 2018 is free, fair, credible, and legitimate. Those electoral reforms must include, number 1, the preparation of a brand new biometric voters' roll to which all political parties sign on to and agree to. Number 2, agreement on an independent electoral management body, particularly in the postmath of the resignation of the ZEC chairperson, Justice Rita Makarau. Number 3, and this is very important, the introduction of a diaspora vote. Zimbabwe has more than 4 million of its citizens that are in their diaspora. And in terms of Section 67 of our Constitution, they have a right to vote, and that right to vote must be respected. Number 4, the introduction of international observation and poll monitors who must come into Zimbabwe months before the election, as opposed to the current practice where a few African observers come into Zimbabwe a few days before the election and enjoy the fine hospitalities at the few remaining fine hotels in Zimbabwe. Number 5, we consider that there must be a defined role of the UN and its agencies in our electoral process. There must be full access to the media. There must be a safe environment for campaigning and voting which is free from intimidation. And naturally, there must be a repeal of the notorious Public Order Security Act, the Access to Information and Protection Act, IPA. Number 3, there must be political and institutional reform, which include aligning the country's laws with the 2013 Constitution, and in particular, actualizing the provisions dealing with devolution and the land question. Number 4, there must be a modicum of economic reforms that focus on macroeconomic stability, growing a shared economy, and addressing the huge challenge of unemployment and underdevelopment. Number 5, and this is very key, given the levels of intolerance, the destruction of the social fabric of our country, we contend that there must be the restoration of the social contract, including the renewal and rebirth of a new Zimbabwe that shuns corruption and promotes national healing and reconciliation. The above roadmap must be guaranteed and underwritten by the international community. In this regard, the role of the African Union and the United Nations will be critical. It will also be important for us as the opposition to give the people of Zimbabwe a genuine chance. It is important that we continue with the path of unity that we've demonstrated and are demonstrating back at home, and that we put on the table programs that will address the fundamental challenges facing our people. And I'm glad to say, Mr. Chairman, that this is exactly what we are doing. We also contend that the new authorities must show some signs of a commitment to real transformation other than cosmetic statements on the economy. The real danger is that they will pursue a Beijing model in respect of which there are nominal improvements on the economy while political space is closed and democracy is muzzled. It is therefore important that the new authorities show signs of commitment to real change. They could, for instance, begin by openly acknowledging and apologizing for the major human rights abuses of the past 4 decades, in particular, Gukura Hundi, the cleanup operation known by the moniker Operation Murambatsvina, and the vicious 2008 election violence, in respect of which thousands of opposition and ordinary citizens were victimized. They could, for instance, order an inquiry into the disappearance of human rights activists, including Patrick Nabanyama and Itai Dzamara. They could, for instance, mollify many Zimbabweans by ordering a judicial inquiry into Zimbabwe's missing diamond revenues, estimated to be around $15 billion. Mr. Chairman, we have lost a lot of time in Zimbabwe, fighting amongst ourselves. One hopes that the fresh beam of light that we saw on 18 November 2017 becomes a permanent bright shining star that shows us the path forward. Zimbabweans must fix our own country and repair the wounds of the past. But we can't do this alone. As Zimbabwe begins this quest for transformation, it shall need the support of the international community, including the United States and Congress in particular at this critical stage. We know that this struggle has been long and difficult, but we're confident that we'll complete what we in the Movement for Democratic Change Alliance started in 1999 when we formed the MDC. I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.